Do you know what? It's really quite funny. I wasn't really planning on doing this tonight because the truth of the matter is, after the Leeds United game, I was actually quite calm about things, which probably I shouldn't have been in all truth because it was another defeat. It was a result that basically meant that we were guaranteed to be in the bottom three for this weekend and next, as well as it turns out. But you know what? The more and more I've thought about it, the more and more I've listened to pundits on mainstream media, the more I've listened to other YouTubers picking through all of the bits and pieces to do with the game and certain other things that I've seen along the way, which some of you may have seen, some of you may not have done, and we'll cover that together. The more angry I've become, the more frustrated, the more wound up I've become, and the more I'm searching for answers. And to be honest with you, I think I probably already know them. And obviously, the thumbnail says who's to blame, and I've probably sort of put it out there who I blame. But is that right or is that wrong? Maybe some of you can convince me otherwise, but I think I know who I blame. But to be fair, there's probably blame that you can apportion in various different directions, to be honest with you. I mean, look, let's be straight, okay? The last two games, Nuno has not helped himself. He's fundamentally picked players and put them in positions and picked starting lineups and formations and all the rest of it that just most fans have looked at and just immediately gone, what is he trying to do? What is his game plan here? And in the Brentford game, obviously he put Ollie Scholes at right back, who's a left back. He put Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Yes, he can play. Was it Wan-Bissaka against Brentford? No, it was Walker Peters. Excuse me. He basically played a right back at left back and a left back at right back. That lasted 45 minutes against Brentford, and he changed it around. He put people in orthodox positions as far as the fullbacks are concerned, and carried on. Fine. And I thought that he won't do that again. Lo and behold, I was wrong. And there were various people that out there in YouTube land had probably put a few clues out there into the ether to say that this might have been something he was going to go with again. Gonzo on Hammerschak, Mark Carlaw on West Ham Way. Both gave hints to say this might happen again in the Leeds game. And I sat there and I was like, probably the same as most people. He can't. Can he? And he did. Against Leeds. He had Wan-Bissaka at left back. He had Scholes at right back. He had El Hadji Malik Diouf at left wing. He had Souček and Irving in central midfield, etc., etc. Now, look, I could forgive Nuno for certain things and sort of say, you know, he's walked in, he's got a squad of players that are patently, they're not good enough. And whatever money we've spent on them in terms of transfer fees and wages, they're not good enough. And we have to accept that. But he's picking players, putting them in wrong positions. He's picking players that, in the case of Andy Irving, and look, I'll say this, I'm sure he's a lovely fella. And for a little while, I wanted to see what he had to offer in the Premier League. I think I've had my answer. And the answer is that with the greatest of respect and with the best will in the world to Andy Irving, who, again, I'm sure he's a lovely fella, but he's a championship player. Now, that I'm not trying to demean him when I say that. I'm really not, because let's have it straight. If you're a player that operates at a championship level, you're playing above an awful lot of people in football. There's only a certain amount of people that are above you in the pecking order. So to turn around and say that you're a championship player, I'm not trying to do him down. What I'm saying is that there's levels, and this isn't his level. It isn't. There's a reason why. Look, let's just look at this just for a moment. Let's just sort of, while I'm sort of talking about Andy Irving, and please bear with me and get your comments in the live chat. I will deal with them shortly, but I just want to get this out there. I just want to get my feelings out there into the open for people to sort of consider and come back at me and maybe tell me that I'm wrong, or maybe that they agree with me. But Andy Irving, let's just focus in on him for a second. So he was brought in under the reign of David Moyes. Now, I'm not entirely sure he was a David Moyes signing. He may well have been a Tim Steiten signing. I suspect he may have been. He was bought from, I think it was Austria Klagenfurt in the Austrian Bundesliga. Now, he came to the club, but he was immediately loaned back to Austria Klagenfurt. Now, I kind of think he must have been a Tim Steiten signing, because if he was signed by David Moyes, then he was signed by David Moyes in the immediate aftermath of winning the Conference League and with one year left on his deal. So if he signed him to loan him out for a year to bring him back in a year's time when he may not actually be at the club at that point, and obviously he wasn't, but at that point when that decision was made, David Moyes would have known, I may not be here in a year's time when this kid comes back. And that was exactly how it panned out. He went out, he came back, and Moyes had moved on to pastures new, and now Julian Lopetegui's in charge. Now, when Julian Lopetegui was in charge, he got a couple of games in pre-season. But let's have it straight. He was playing teams like Dagenham and Redbridge, and he was looking okay, but he was playing against teams like Dagenham and Redbridge. And when the season actually started in earnest, hey presto, he wasn't involved, and he wasn't really involved under Graham Potter. I think he got his debut away at Chelsea, if I remember it rightly, under Potter, but he didn't build on that. And that probably should have been a little bit of a signal to sort of say, this guy's not up to the mark. But we then get to the summer, and there's teams like Glasgow Rangers, Glasgow Celtic, Millwall, and Wrexham that were in for him. Now, just stop and think about this. Now, I'm just going to move Millwall and Wrexham to one side for a moment. So just bear with me on this. Rangers and Celtic, two huge teams in terms of their global fan base, two huge teams in terms of their history, in terms of what they've done in the history of football. Celtic, for example, the Lisbon Lions, 1967, they won the European Cup, becoming the first British team to do so. Fantastic. No problem at all. But again, right here, right now, in the year 2025, where do Celtic and Rangers stand in terms of their capability on the pitch? Well, you've only got to look at European football recently. What was it Rangers got done in the qualifying stages of the Champions League? Was it 9-1 on aggregate to that mighty team, Club Brugge? Forgive me, it wasn't Real Madrid. And Celtic, similar thing as well. They got dumped out of the Champions League at the qualifying stage by some team from, was it Azerbaijan or something like that? I'm trying to remember. Kairat Almaty is the name, if I remember correctly. Again, this is not Bayern Munich that they were dumped out by, with all due respect. So Andy Irving was attracting interest from clubs of, yes, their name is a huge name. Don't misunderstand me. In terms of what they're capable of on the pitch, there it is, ladies and gentlemen. And Millwall and Wrexham, two championship teams, one of which has just gone up to the championship. So, with all due respect, Andy Irving, I come back to my central point, Andy Irving is not a Premier League player. He's probably a championship player at best. And that's the evidence for that. You've also got things like we're playing with no striker yet again. Yet we had two strikers on the bench, both for the Brentford game and for the Leeds game. Now, all right, you could turn around and say, well, Callum Wilson maybe isn't fit enough to last the whole 90 minutes. And I'd be the first to agree with that. Couldn't you sort of rotate Callum Wilson and Callum Marshall around so that they could share the 90 minutes? Or maybe you'd have to move Bowen up top. To play Lucas Paqueta there? Seriously? I don't know. I don't know what Nuno's thinking. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say Nuno out after 4 games. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go down that route yet. But the more he makes these decisions, the more I do start to come around to what I've heard some people say. I'm going to reference a few people out there in YouTube land. So I'm obviously aware that Nick from Claret and Booze has floated this theory. I'm aware that Alf on Me Ed Son has floated this theory. Also, and forgive me, I think his name's Sam Palmer. And forgive me if I'm wrong. I stumbled across his YouTube channel the other day. Mr. Moon has left the building. And I've got to be honest, this guy is really good as well. So go and have a look at his YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. And also Alf from On Me Ed Son, and obviously Nick from Claret and Booze. But I dare say you're probably already subscribed to him. Why wouldn't you be when you're here? But they were all basically saying the same thing. And at the minute, I'm not thinking this yet, but the more the lineups come out that are a little bit funky, a little bit strange, and you look at it and you just scratch your head, the more I'm going to start to think that maybe what they're trying to say has an element of truth to it. And that is that Nuno has probably walked in, seen how bad we are, seen that in order for us to be competitive in the Premier League is going to require us to do an amount of business in January that quite simply we won't be able to do, and we'll be cut adrift by then. No one will want to come to us, yada, yada, yada. So he knows that he's looking down the barrel of relegation, and he doesn't want that on his CV, and he probably already wants out. Now, like I say, this is not my thoughts. These are the thoughts of, like I say, the guys that I've just mentioned. Now, at the minute, I'm not thinking that yet, but I think, like I say, if this happens many more times where, I mean, look, if he turns around and puts Lucas Fabianski at centre forward, then I'm probably going to go, do you know what, actually maybe, or things like that. The more that sort of stuff happens where you look at lineups and you just go, that doesn't make any sense, the more I'm going to start to come around to their way of thinking. I'm not there yet, but I'm not dismissing what they're saying out of hand. I'm sort of going, I'm not quite there yet, boys, but I can understand how you've got there. So the players aren't good enough, and that comes from to me, a number of aspects, because you've got to put certain people in the firing line for the players that have been brought in, but it's a bit of a patchwork quilt mentality, and it all feeds back to the same person, and we'll deal with that person as the main event. But we've got certain people. We've got people like Tim Stighton that have brought in players. You've got people like Julian Lopetegui, Graham Potter, Kyle McCauley. There's been David Sullivan himself, and we will come back to him. But they've all had a go, and they've all got their own ideas on what a player should and shouldn't be, and what we need and what we don't need, and all the rest of it. And price, I guess, plays a part, and favoured agents and all that sort of malarkey. And we've ended up with this squad that is just so unbalanced and just has so many different deficiencies within them. I mean, take El Hadji Malik Diouf. I mean, go back a couple of weeks, and there was everybody thinking that this guy was the reincarnated version of Roberto Carlos. Now, I didn't think that. I got to be honest. I looked at him and thought, he's okay going forwards, but I'm not so sure. Call me old school, but I understand that in the modern game of football, you want your fullbacks to bomb on and provide the width, and I kind of get that. But fundamentally, a left back is a defender, and a defender, by definition, should be able to defend. And I don't see that this kid is able to defend. So, should he not be able to defend? Should that not be something he's got in his skill set? And it just seems to me that he's just one of these players that you just sort of go, well, don't worry, just keep bombing on. You just push the opposition fullback and winger back, and don't worry about defending, because you'll be in the other half of the pitch all the time. Well, no, he's not, because obviously he's got another 9 outfielders on the pitch who are probably not up to the mark as far as their jobs are concerned in the main. And he's being exposed now. And to be honest with you guys, I'm sitting here and I'm going, do you know what he reminds me of? Arthur Masuaku. We all sort of moaned about the defensive capabilities of Arthur Masuaku. This kid is Arthur Masuaku. He's just a bit younger than what Arthur Masuaku was when he walked through the door. He's a 20-year-old version of Arthur Masuaku. Anyway, guys, for those of you that are watching this live or watch this afterwards, you've got 29 of you watching. If you do us a big favor and just drop a like on this stream and just check to make sure that you're subscribed. And if you're not subscribed, if you could just click subscribe. It just take a second of your time, and it take you. It won't cost you any money, and trust me, we don't get any data sensitive information or anything like that. I won't sort of come round to your house at midnight and be knocking on your door asking you for money or anything like that. Just click subscribe, and it just helps to grow the channel into something a bit bigger, and I really would appreciate it. And as I say, I'm going to have a little look at your live chat comments now, and as I say, get your comments in. Don't be shy. Larry, hope you are well. Hope you're good. You got the old barbecue on the go, my friend. Larry says it shows how much he didn't understand the team. I take it you're talking about Nuno. I just, like I say, I do have a number of elements that I do think are culpable, but they all lead back to one person, and we all know who it is, and we'll get onto it in a minute. But I'm going to share this with you guys. Now, this was, and I haven't fact checked this, but I'd just be very interested to know. And some of you may have seen this, and some of you may not have done. But cast your peepers on this. Now, this is, and I believe this is up to and includes the Leeds United game, as I understand it. Now, I think that you can look at that, and if you've got any sort of reasonable level of just intelligence and whatever, I don't think you'd even need to know too much about football just to understand that if you've got a Premier League consisting of 20 teams and you've got stats like that looking at you, and then you look at the league table, you could probably turn around and make a sort of very good analysis of why we are in the position we are when you look at stats like that. Distance running at high speed, 44 kilometres. In the 20 clubs in the Premier League, we rank 19th. There is only one club lower than us in that statistic as far as distance running at high speed. Sprints, 19th out of 20th. Distance at high intensity, 18th out of 20th. Average sustained speed, 10th. So we're halfway there. That's something, I suppose. But the one that really concerns me is the one at the bottom, which when you look at the one at the top and you sort of put them side by side and then put them side by side with our league positioning, you just sit there and go, oh my God, there's the problem. The distance that we walk is 147 kilometres, which is 4th in the Premier League. So out of the 20 teams in the Premier League, there is only 3 teams that have covered more distance at a walking pace. And as I say, you then compare and contrast that to the distance we cover running at high speed, and we've got the second worst statistics. You just look at that and go, there's your problem. There's your problem. Now, it's not uncommon that when a manager walks into a Premier League club, that the manager may make a comment in the media where he might shine a light on the struggles of the team that he's just walked into by turning around and saying the team aren't fit enough. I think David Moyes may have even said that when he came in. I don't know whether it was after Slav. I think it might have been, or it might have been when he came in after Pellegrini. But I'm pretty sure that David Moyes himself said when he came to West Ham in one of the 2 spells he had, that the team weren't fit enough and that he was going to work on that. This kind of gives me a little bit of a hint that there might be a little bit of that going on here. Now, is that down to Graham Potter? I think that he would have to be culpable for this. If we've got a team that is fundamentally unfit, I'd have to turn around and say, what the fuck were you doing in the summer then? Were you not working on fitness? This is an absolutely non-negotiable building block for any Premier League team, right? You need to be fit. You're going to be running around at high pace for 90 plus minutes. You need to be physically fit. These stats don't say to me that we've got a fit squad, because if we had a fit squad, those stats wouldn't be in the shape that they're in, right? And if those stats were better than what they are, I don't think that it's a leap to turn around and say we wouldn't be in 19th place. I don't believe. I can forgive anyone. I said this to my son earlier. I can forgive any player. I can forgive any team for maybe not being good enough, for maybe not having the quality that is required to get 3 points on a Premier League match day. I can forgive that. What I can't forgive is a lack of effort. I cannot forgive a lack of effort. These stats suggest to me there is a lack of effort at West Ham United, and I believe that goes hand in glove with our position in the Premier League, which after today's results, we could have been bottom. Now, it didn't happen, but we're not far off it. Let's not kid ourselves. This is where we are at the minute. This is us. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, and I dare say you'll get your thoughts in. Any manager employed by Sully must have bought into all the bullshit from Sully. A proper manager wouldn't work for our idiot owners. Pierre, I can't disagree with you, mate. Look, we're only going to go into the bargain bin of managers, aren't we? I mean, let's have it right. We know that Sullivan is not going to go and get some of the names that were bandied around, probably more in hope than expectation. The likes of Marco Silva, who was employed at Fulham, who was Scott Parker, who was employed at Burnley. We're never going to employ a manager we're always going to employ an out of work manager who is grateful, who Sullivan can kind of manipulate. Larry, completely agree with you on that. It wasn't lost on me that in the game on Friday night that the performance improved after the introduction of Potts, Fernandez, and then later on Magassa. Now, whether it was just that or whether it was the fact that Leeds just kind of held us at arm's length, I don't know, element of both. But I have to sort of say that the improvement did happen after his introduction and others. So for me, I'm like, he has to start, doesn't he? And again, if we play against Newcastle and Potts is on the bench and Souček and Irving are once again on the pitch, then I start to come round to the narrative that perhaps Nuno's actually looking for a way out. And I hope I'm wrong, because it would be like, here we go again. Here we go again. Tomlinski, hope you're doing well. Evening, gang. In any other industry, this consistent incompetence for managers now would likely be classed as sabotage. Again, we're talking about sabotage from Nuno himself. Is there an element that it's possibly coming higher up the pecking order and there's other forces at play? And bear in mind, you've got David Sullivan, you've got Karen Brady, you've got Daniel Kretinsky, you've got various mechanisms that are moving within the club. But let's have it right. We've got really one guy that's in charge, and he's the guy on the thumbnail, and we'll get to him in a minute. Wait, Gacy, my comments I showed. Yeah, I just press a button and up they come, mate. I hope you're still there. Tomlinski, even Sunderland have come up and shown more. Right, I'll tell you what, I want to talk about this as well, because this is really interesting. Because Sunderland, you look at the amount of business that, and bear in mind, they came up through the playoffs. They weren't probably a month or two prior to them winning that game at Wembley. They probably weren't expecting to be a Premier League club at this moment in time, but here they are. And they went into they come out of the playoff game. They did this sort of big sort of spending spree and whatever, got a load of players in, Granit Xhaka being one of them, and obviously he's quite sort of older in years and he's got Premier League experience. But a lot of these guys that they brought in didn't have Premier League experience, were quite young and inexperienced and whatever. And there's none of this bullshit about, oh, well, they need time to get ready, acclimatise and this, that, and the other. They have hit the ground running. And of course, we know that because we were the first team that they met on the opening weekend of the Premier League. And I was up there. And first half, we were so-so. Second half, we got blown away. Absolutely blown away. Sunderland have done brilliantly, and I don't expect that they're going to be top four once the 38th game is completed. I really don't. But do you know what? They're already nearly halfway towards safety when you look at their points tally. I think they've got 17, and if you accept that 40 points is the magical number, they're almost halfway there. They're almost halfway there. And here's the thing I don't get. If Sunderland can identify players, young, up-and-coming, aspiring players, and Sunderland are a team who got promoted to the Premier League, and Sunderland at that point in time probably would have been a team that at that moment in time, most people would have said, we'll go straight back down to the Championship. Why couldn't we have identified some of these players? Why couldn't we have got some of these players in? I think we know the answer. I'm just going to fire that question out there, and I think everybody knows. But I'll just let that question hang in the air. Sharky, hope you are well. Just a few people saying hello to each other. Remember when Villa went down a few seasons ago? That's the vibe I'm getting from West Ham this season. Thanks for joining us, DJRM75. Listen, I think anybody that's gone through a relegation, and regrettably, I've been around a bit. So in my lifetime, let's work it out. So there was a relegation in the late 70s, but I was only a kid then. So I've got no memory of that whatsoever. There was the relegation in 89, which I do remember. There was the relegation 92, which I remember. There was the relegation in 2003. There was the relegation in 2011. So I've had 5 relegations up to this point in my life. One of them I don't remember. This feels very, very similar. But my concern is this, and I think this is a concern that a lot of people have put out there, and what I'm about to say probably you've heard a few times before. Uh, my concern is that we don't have what we had before in Upton Park, which was obviously quite a tight knit ground. The stands were quite tight onto the pitch, and there's stories of people, especially in the old days, of where they'd be taking throw-ins and corners, and they would literally be getting people in the crowd tapping them on the shoulder and leaning in their ear roll and calling them all sorts of obscenities and whatever else. But we don't have that now. We've got this, this nice stadium that will be a half fill if we're lucky. Larry, you really didn't need to do that, my friend. I do appreciate it, and I will send that on to Iron Supporting Food Banks. This is not what you're saying there is completely correct. You need to have players that play hard, work hard. You know, non-negotiable for me is hard work, intensity, endeavour, courage. They're things you shouldn't need to train. You either have them or you don't. Jean-Claire Todibo, right? I've given Andy Irving. I don't think I was unfair in anything I said. If anybody thinks I was, forgive me. We'll have to agree to disagree. I've not slagged the guy off as a person. I'm saying he's not a Premier League player. Jean-Claire Todibo. Wow. How on earth have we shelled out 35 million quid on this geezer? I am shocked, absolutely shocked that this guy once pulled on the shirt for FC Barcelona, one of the great names in world football. How on earth he ever got to play and represent the Catalonian Giants, I do not know. I do not know. But Larry, you're absolutely bang on with that. You know, working hard for the badge, working for your teammates, working for the fans, whose hard-earned money is what pays your wages and gives you a career. And Jean-Claire Todibo, I think it was Nicky Hawkins on West Ham Fan TV, did a video yesterday, and he was there, I wasn't, where he turned around and said after the game, Jean-Claire Todibo's laughing and joking. I don't expect that Jean-Claire Todibo has got to be all sullen for the rest of his life because he lost a game of football. But once you're on that pitch and you're in front of the fans and all the rest of it and the cameras, you need to be aware that there are eyes and ears and everything's on you, sort of thing. So the fact that you've just been bummed and we're now second bottom of the table, and at that point we could have been bottom at the end of the weekend if Wolves' result had gone in a different way. We could have been bottom right here, right now. But I'm like, sorry, mate, you need to read the room. I'm worried as well, Larry. I'm beyond worried. I have resigned myself to relegation. Like I say, it feels like relegation's incoming. It smells like it. It looks like it. And as I say, I've been here before. Let's see who else we got. Ray, hope you are well. We got a few people just saying hello to each other. Nuno's here for the cash. So was Potter. Tom Linsky. Do you know what? This is the thing that worries me. Is like I say, and I've heard the people that I referenced earlier, and I'll give them a shout out again. Nick from Claret and Booze, Al from On Me Ed Son, and as I say, forgive me, as I say, I've only stumbled across his channel today, truthfully. I think it's Sam Palmer from Mr. Moon has left the building. And as I say, if you haven't seen his channel and Alf's channel, and I'm sure you've seen Nick's, but if you haven't, go and give these three channels a look. They're great bit of content for you to get your teeth into. And they've all basically said that they think Nuno's looking for a way out. And I'm not there yet, but I'll tell you what, the more strange lineups I get, the more I sort of go, wow, that could be. Why the F have we ditched someone? We paid Chelsea one. Yeah, exactly. Another decision, which I guess we'll come on to the main event in due course as to who I think this all leads back to. You know, people that want to turn around and say, well, he was Graham Potter's mate and we got rid of Graham Potter. But if he's the head, it's not like he's the coaching staff. He's not like he was the assistant manager. It's not like he was the goalkeeping coach. I get that Graham Potter's backroom staff, as far as that's concerned, once the manager goes, the tendency is that they all depart as well, by and large. Now, Kyle McCauley was a data analyst at Chelsea, and previous to that, And when he came here, he was given the role as a head of recruitment. Now, when Graham Potter was sacked as the Chelsea manager, Kyle McCauley stayed at Chelsea probably for a good year or so before Kyle McCauley was brought into the club at the behest of Graham Potter, which we paid £1 million for to get him to the club. Now, was he a success in his role? Was he a failure in his role? I, to be honest, don't know. I think it's probably too early to tell. But what I do think is that we should have just kept him and given him the role as the... Because here's the stupid thing. We've got rid of him, and now I'm hearing today that what are we looking to bring into the club? A head of recruitment. You couldn't make this shit up. So we brought Kyle McCauley in, paid £1 million for the privilege, paid him for 9 months of his labours, and then at the end of the 9 months, when Graham Potter's given his P45, we give it a week or two and we go, you can piss off as well, mate. And then we're going to bring someone else in to do your job as well. Well, what did Kyle McCauley do wrong? I can understand getting rid of Potter. You can look at the results. It's a results for a Premier League head coach manager. It's a results orientated business. With heads of recruitment, you probably need to give them a couple of transfer windows to see whether they're up to the mark. I don't think he had that, in fairness, and I think we could have kept him. And even if, because look, Graham Potter's now the manager of Sweden. If Graham Potter had wanted Kyle McCauley that badly, he could have turned around to West Ham and said, okay, I'd like Kyle to be released from his contract, please. We could then turn around to the Swedish FA and go, well, that's fine, but he's going to cost you £1 million. Chelsea did it to us. Well, why are we always on the receiving end of this shit? Why is it always us that have got to pay compensation and release clauses, but no one pays us? What is this? Potts does need to start, Larry. You're absolutely correct. 4 managers, players from 4 managers, 1 director of football, and the Poison Dwarf. As I say, I'll come on to him at the end. He's got a special place. He's got a special mention from me. Heinz 57 FC. Yeah, it is. It's a patchwork quilt. Like I say, you've got players there that Sullivan's picked. You've got players there McCauley's picked, Potter's picked, Lopetegui's picked, Moyes' picked, Stuyton's picked. You'll probably find Beryl the Tea Lady probably got, I don't know, Andy Irving in or someone like that. I don't know. Yeah, you're too kind, Larry. I don't know about a legend, but I appreciate the sentiment as well. Leslie, hope you are well. Obsidian, you too. Hope you're good. Leslie again. What we got? Just a few little pleasantries. And Nigel, hope you are well. Says good show. I think we will survive by getting some surprise, unexpected points before the end of the year. I hope you're right, Nigel. I really do. Then clear out. Rebuild starts in January. Stay up just, and then further Nuno rebuild in the summer. I hope you're right, Nigel. Here's my concern. Here is my concern. The players that we want to clear out, who's going to buy them? And who's going to buy them for anything close to what we would need them to be bought for in order for us to ensure that the profit and sustainability rules are adhered to? Because I look at players like Jean-Claire Todibo, I look at players like Max Kilman, 75 odd £million of centre back. No one's going to pay anything close to that. I look at other people, Andy Irving. Again, I'm sorry to pick on him. I really don't mean to. I'm sure he's a lovely guy, but we're not gonna move them on probably to another Premier League club, because any other Premier League club would just go, sorry, what? A defender that can't defend? A midfielder that's got no legs? Yeah, probably not. So they're probably going to end up having to go to a championship club, and we're going to be losing an awful lot of money. And then my other concern is this, Nigel. Who's going to come to us in January in the situation that we are very likely going to be in? Now, I know you say they're about unexpected points before the end of the year, so that may change things if that comes to pass, and I take that on board. But let's just suppose we carry on at the same sort of level or depth of performance that we are at the minute, which is pretty fucking shocking. I think we'll all agree. I don't see that any player worth their salt is going to look at us as a team that's heading out of the league and go, "Oh yeah, I'll go to West Ham. Yeah, lovely. That'll be somewhere I'd like to ply my trade and pick up me wage packet every month. Oh, I'd love to go there. No problem at all. No chance. I just don't see it, Nigel. I think the best we can hope for are players that come to us, because obviously this is a World Cup year. Players that would come to us on a loan for the remainder of the season, because obviously they're not going to want to take the risk that they're going to, or they'd have to put some release clause in like Demba Ba did all those years ago, who came to us in the January transfer window, and he had like a release clause that if we got relegated, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong. But at the minute, I've not got an awful lot of faith in your look into the future. I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong. Let's have a look. Obsidian says Diouf might have been a great if Potter got his other targets, but this is now Nuno ball. That is something we need to factor in. I mean, look, the thing about Diouf that I kind of have to sort of caveat it with is that Diouf is a left wing back, as I understand it, who can play at left back. I don't think he's a left back that can play at left wing back. He's the other way around. And as I say, I use the parallel with Arthur Masuaku. Arthur Masuaku was a left wing back. He wasn't a left back, but occasionally he acted as Aaron Cresswell's understudy. But he was never a left back. He was a left wing back. And I think that's what we've got with El Hadji Malik Diouf. And that's the reason why he can't defend. We winged staying up last season and weakened out. Yeah, we absolutely are. And this is the thing that really frustrates me, is that everybody saw in the summer transfer window, that there was not a sufficient amount of business being done. Everybody said we needed a mobile, box-to-box, tigerish midfielder. We didn't get it. Everybody said we needed to get a robust, mobile, pacey, athletic striker. We got Callum Wilson. I'm not convinced whether we needed a goalkeeper. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. But personally, I think that we could have maybe kept Fabianski in the building and maybe sort of given. I don't know. I'm not sure that by spending £20 million on Hermansen was really necessary. I'm not really too sure that spending the money on Malik Diouf was strictly necessary. If Graham Potter would have managed to build some, mend some fences with Emerson, maybe could have kept him and brought on Ollie Scholes and whatever. I think did we need to spend some of those money on players? I'm not sure we did. You have to ask what's going on in training. These players aren't being paid in wine gums. I think they are. And I think that I'll just get it back up again, just in case anybody missed it. I think that this probably says that maybe they are getting paid in wine gums or Mars bars or fish and chips or, deep fried kebabs or something like that, because those stats say to me that we've got, forgive me, I'm going to use some colourful language here, we've just got a bunch of lazy fucking cunts that are pulling on our shirt. And that's a shirt that has been worn by people down the years, the likes of Bobby Moore, Jeff Hurst, Martin Peters, Billy Bonds, Trevor Brooking, Frank Lampard. The list goes on. And these are players that wore that shirt with pride and always tried to uphold the principles of the founding fathers of this club, going right the way back to 1895, the Thames Iron Works. We was a community club, working class and hard work and endeavour, and all those things were non-negotiable. And you look at these stats and you just go, mate, these guys are not living up to those standards. They're not living up. So I think they are being paid in wine gums or some other sugary sweets, because I tell you what, Tom Linsky, I tell you what, like I say, these stats do suggest that these lazy fuckers are just not they're not doing what they need to do. I mean, yeah, I know what you're saying about they're not being paid in wine gums. Look, they're very highly paid Premier League players, but those stats tell you that they're not worth it. Look, you say that, Nigel, Leslie, about Nigel. Look, he's allowed to have his opinion. He's allowed to be optimistic. And look, I'm not saying he's wrong. I don't see that that's going to happen, but I don't have a crystal ball. Maybe there is an unexpected result or two. I mean, I listened to Mark Carlaw on West Ham Way. I was driving back from Devon earlier on with my daughter, and I had him on in the car, and he turned around and said, look, he put out this narrative that if there was an unexpected result in the next two games and we actually managed to beat Newcastle and Burnley, far-fetched though that might seem, but it could happen. Just maybe the Newcastle game, Nuno picks a coherent formation, a coherent personnel. He makes the substitutions at the right time, and maybe we get a slice of luck. It could happen. It could happen. Look, Newcastle they're not going to win the Premier League this year, and I don't think they're going to be in contention. So they're not on that level, and maybe they don't need to beat us. But maybe if we turn up, maybe if Nuno somehow manages to get into those fuckers and really sort of straighten them out, I don't know. All things are possible, Leslie. All things are possible. For the first time since last February, the Long Johns went one. Oh, the Long Johns went on, feeling nice and warm. Yeah, it is a bit nippy, isn't it? The old heating needs to come on. BS knows nothing about football. Everyone but them knew the three teams coming up were better than last season. We had strength. 100% Obsidian. I think most people could see that the strengthening that we did in the summer wasn't really up to the mark. I think a lot of people looked at it and just went, this is just going through the motions. And they're doing something that's very, very dangerous, and that is to try and hope and pray and expect that the three teams that come up are going to be the same three teams that go down, which, to be fair, the previous two seasons is what happened. But at some point, that trend has to change. And even if it's only one club that stays up out of the three that come up, and there's two that go down, well, if we haven't strengthened enough and we're one of those, that three, that's not. And like I say, we've not got Upton Park anymore. London Stadium, half filled, is not. I mean, look, it's not an intimidating atmosphere most of the time with 62,500 people in it. What chance is there of that of being an intimidating atmosphere if you've got 28,000 watching us play Rochdale or Summer? And wouldn't it be typical? We go down and fucking Millwall get promoted. Yeah, Tom Ray thinks there's something going on. What if Nuno brings JWP back before Potts? Do you know what? I mean, look, if I had to make a choice between Andy Irving, and like I say, I don't want this to make this sound like I'm gunning for Andy Irving. As I say, this is not a personal vendetta. This is not a personal attack. I'm just saying he's not up to the mark. As I say, he could play in the Championship for a Championship team, and he would do a good job there, I'm quite sure. But if you offered me a choice between James Ward-Prowse and Andy Irving, I think I probably would choose James Ward-Prowse. If I chose Potts and Andy Irving, Potts all day long and twice on a Sunday. Potts would also beat James Ward-Prowse. So out of the three of them, Potts wins for me. If he brought back James Ward-Prowse before Potts, I would be astonished. I don't see that happening at all. I really don't. Nuno's working on his own constructive dismissal. Look, Pierre, the more these lineups just baffle the living daylights out of me, the more I think that maybe there is something to it. The more I think that maybe Nuno is trying to engineer his own exit from the club. Nigel comes in, says to Leslie that he is an optimist, but being a West Ham supporter has turned me to drink. I completely get you, Nigel. And you do kind of have to be a little bit of an optimist in some respects. you have to try and sort of, well, maybe we could. Maybe I try to be. As I say, I've got really angry over the last 24 hours with certain things that I've seen in the media and whatever. I also want to talk about, and I don't know if you've seen this, David Croft, the Formula One commentator for Sky Sports. I don't know whether you've seen this, guys, but if you haven't and you're not aware of this, he's a West Ham fan, and he was actually on Sky Sports Formula One over the weekend, and he was coating off the hierarchy at West Ham. And let's get to him. Let's get to the guy that's on the thumbnail, and this is the guy who I ultimately blame for everything that's going wrong at the club, not just now, but going back over a cumulative length of time. David Sullivan. So David Croft took aim at David Sullivan and said, we're not just sleepwalking into relegation. We are in a Formula One performance car down the finishing straight, going 225 miles an hour into relegation. Now, the first thing I thought was, obviously there's a West Ham fan that's calling it as he sees it, and probably saying what we have all been saying, but he's doing it on a much bigger stage. He's a Formula One commentator. He's got a worldwide audience, and he's saying what he's saying. But isn't it funny that for a long time, a lot of the media have been trying to protect David Sullivan, or to try and, don't look over there. Don't look at the problem that's there. That's David Sullivan. Look over here at this problem, like the manager or the director of football or whatever, or protests, and try and sort of shift the blame. And here is a media personality, celebrity, call him what you want, David Croft. There is a guy that works in the mainstream media that is there on live telly that's basically saying, no, the problem is there, and it's the majority shareholder, and his name is David Sullivan, and he needs to go. Now, at that point, for me, the media at that point, I don't think from this point on can turn around and say that the problem lies anywhere else, that the responsibility lies. Simon Jordan's another one. Now, I actually like what Simon Jordan has to say quite a lot of the time. I think he does speak a lot of sense a lot of the time. But the thing that I've picked up on is there's an awful lot of occasions when Simon Jordan turns around and says, I'm no fan of David Sullivan, but... And then the next sentence is basically Simon Jordan defending David Sullivan. Why do you have to start your sentences off with, every single time you're about to defend David Sullivan, you turn around and say, I don't want to defend David Sullivan, but, well, fucking don't. If you don't want to defend him, don't fucking defend him. I don't get it. But David Croft has obviously now taken aim at David Sullivan. And now I think that any other person in the media is now going to find it very, very difficult to try and push back and say, it's just disgruntled West Ham fans and this, that, and the other. Well, there's a guy that works in the media. He works for Sky Sports. I'd be very interested to know if David Sullivan maybe sort of pushes back and sort of has a little bit of a moan up, because I dare say he's got people that he knows at Sky Sports that he'll probably have a little bit of a moan and sort of like have a little bit of a word with probably David Croft's bosses indirectly. I know obviously David Croft works in the Formula One side of things, not the Premier League side of things, but they're all part of Sky Sports at the end of the day. So I dare say Sullivan will probably try and sort of have a few words, but David Croft should hold his ground and tell them to fuck off. He's just giving his opinion at the end of the day. Don't you think that this stinks of gross incompetence of those who run? 100%, David. 100%. David Sullivan is... Look, right, okay, let's strip it back. Let's look at the squad, and let's agree that that squad is woefully inadequate. Now, you could turn around and say, well, that's the responsibility of the head of recruitment. Okay, well, that was Kyle McCauley, right? Who put him in post? That would be David Sullivan, right? Or if it wasn't David Sullivan and it was Graham Potter, okay, who put Graham Potter in post? Well, it was Karen Brady. Okay, but who ultimately signed off on that decision? Or who gave Karen Brady carte blanche to allow Potter to make that call? Well, that would be David Sullivan. Okay, right. So it's the same person then, isn't it? Okay. What else do you want to sort of try and use as ammunition? What else do you want to try and sort of blame as to the reason why the squad's in the state that it's in? I'll tell you what, why don't we have a little bit of a pop at Tim Steighton, huh? Why don't we sort of have a look at Tim Steighton? Okay, well, why was he put? Well, it was Daniel Kaczynski. Yeah, but what was it that led Daniel Kaczynski to want to have a director of football? It was because what was going on before Daniel Kaczynski inserted Tim Steighton as the director of football. And look, you can say what you want, whether Tim Steighton you think did well or did not so well, whatever. You can have your own opinion on that. But why was it that Daniel Kaczynski was so insistent to get a director of football in position? It was because of David Sullivan's continually dithering and dicking around, and he'll go to Salthouse and Silkman and all of his favoured agents, and it would just be an absolute sort of shit show as far as transfer business is concerned. And Daniel Kaczynski wanted to make it a little bit more professional. And okay, you could turn around and say that maybe Tim Steighton wasn't the pearl diver that we thought he was going to be, but ultimately it came about because of all of the shenanigans that was going on up to that point, and Daniel Kaczynski wanted it to be more professional, more in line with modern European football. So again, that comes about because of the actions of David Sullivan, who put Julian Lopetegui in charge. If you want to sort of take aim at Julian Lopetegui, well, that was a David Sullivan pick, wasn't it? That was David Sullivan's pick to come in. Now, that should have been really the choice of Tim Steighton, because he was the director of football, because directors of football usually should be putting managers, players into position. But that was a David Sullivan pick. Why was he a David Sullivan pick? Because he was available, because he was free. He wasn't in a job. He'd been out of a job for a year. He was waiting in the wings for probably the best part of 6 months. David Sullivan offered David Moyes a contract after the 2-0 game at the Emirates, sort of Christmas, New Year time, 2023. And okay, David Moyes chose not to sign it, and then all of a sudden we started losing games, and then the contract offer was withdrawn, blah, 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 blah. But Julian Lopetegui was put in position by David Sullivan. What else do you want to sort of link back to David Sullivan? The concessions tickets, should we go down that route? Should we investigate that? Concessions, that was on David Sullivan. That was his brainchild, along with Karen Brady. Let's have it right. I dare say they were working in tandem, but ultimately, who's the person that calls the shots? It's David Sullivan. Everything that's happened, us getting players in like Callum Wilson, that was a David Sullivan pick. I mean, really? That's your answer? To get in another knackered 30-year-old injury-prone striker when we've already got one of those at the club? Seriously? Unbelievable. Top to bottom, asset stripping exercise. Sullivan, they do. Take a look at Birmingham. I dare say you can probably get a few Birmingham fans that would turn around and tell you a story or two about those two. We could get relegated with the lowest points total ever to go with getting relegated with the highest total ever. Yeah, because obviously we got relegated in 2003. We had 42 points. We could have won on that last day at St Andrews, and we still would have gone down on 44 because of the goal difference. But I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, at the minute, like I say, 9 games in, we're on 4 points. You can work it out over the rest of the season. We're not, whether we get the lowest points total or not, if we're still in the bottom 3, the end result's the same. The 2 centre-backs who played on Friday are abysmal. I would take Rigobert Song over our centre-backs. Mate, I would take, mate, I'd probably take, you name me any centre-back that we've had. I mean, look, if you've got centre-backs that are £75 million, you kind of expect a certain level of performance, especially when one of them has come from another Premier League club. Another one of them represented Barcelona at one point, And fucking hell, Juventus wanted Todibo by all accounts. I bet they're laughing their socks off. I bet they're turning around saying, "Thank fuck, we good. You didn't get this chump." Yeah, absolutely shocking. Roger Johnson, tell you what, let's get Roger Johnson out of retirement, see if he fancies a go. If our season relies on the character of that French person, we are doomed. You're 100% right, Mandy. I mean, just absolutely shocking. We need 4 or 5 signings in January and the right 5. Too big a job to think we're doomed. Again, I have to ask the question, Leslie. If we are where I think we're going to be, and where probably most people think we're going to be on the 1st of January, with obviously the points total that I suspect we might have and the gap between where we are and safety, who is going to sign on a permanent deal that wouldn't demand some sort of release clause? I think the best we're going to hope for is loan signings. Players that are probably at clubs that at that point in time, they're not getting minutes, that might be looking towards the World Cup that's coming along. One player that springs to mind as a player that I would probably say that would be a decent player, but would he be interested in coming to us at that moment in time, given all of those factors? Probably not. But he's Ben White. He's not getting any real game time at Arsenal, and he's just sort of any chance he's got of going with England to the World Cup, he's probably going to disappear if he carries on just sitting on his arse. So I guess if we could offer him first team football, but it would only be a loan. It would only be a loan because he's not going to want to come to a club that probably is going to go down in all likelihood, unless, I don't know, maybe he signs on a permanent, but there's a release clause that says in the case of relegation, you've got to let me go if there's a club that comes in with this much. I don't know. It's all cash going to mates. We've been royally had. Tom Linsky, it looks that way. Ridiculous to think Nuno is tanking the games for money. Dumbest thing I've heard all day. I don't know. I say I'm not currently on that particular bandwagon yet. But I tell you what, Larry, the more times he puts out starting lineups that have right backs at left backs at right back, attacking midfielders at striker, left wingers at right wing, etc., the more that happens, the more I think something's going on here. And like I say, I've heard people say that they think that he's walked in the door, had a look at the personnel, have a look at what they can and can't do, had the defeats that we've had, 3 defeats in the 4 matches with the the first game drawn away at Everton, and that it's now dawning on Nuno that shit, this lot are absolutely fucking useless, and I can't fucking save them. This is just impossible, and I want to fucking get out of here. I don't know. I don't know if it is ridiculous. As I say, I'm not at the minute saying that is what's happening. But I tell you what, if that game against Newcastle, he does a similar thing that he's done in the last 2 games, Larry, and he puts out a team that is completely nonsensical, then I start to wonder. Nuno's on a 3-year contract worth around 15 mil. If we sack him after 12 games, he'll walk with 15. Yeah, that's the way that modern football works, and it's completely ridiculous. That it's like that. I don't know what to say, Mandy. I mean, if he wants out, but Premier League managers, they're never going to quit. They don't quit nowadays. They prefer to have the trigger pulled on them for exactly that reason, because if they walk, they don't get the money. But if they get sacked, Larry, Tom Linsky's replying to Larry saying, tell me what competent person puts the left back right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's like, why would you do that? I get that you look. I get maybe experimentation, and I will talk about another experiment as well, because I'd be interested to know what you guys think, because it's been put out there by Tony Cascarino. He's suggested about putting Aaron Wan-Bissaka at central mid, and at first I thought, no, what are you on about? But look, Tony Cascarino's played international and top league football. He's played in France as well. So to be fair, he knows probably a lot more about football than I do. And he turned around and said that Wan-Bissaka reckons he could do a job in midfield because, number one, he can cover quite a lot of ground. He's quite fit. He's quite mobile. And number two, one of his key attributes is that he's very good at recovering the ball from opposition players. And we don't have a midfielder that can win the ball back. We don't have a midfielder at the moment that can win the ball back. Now, okay, maybe Magassa, maybe Fernandez, maybe Potts, if they're deployed in the correct way, maybe one of them could be that player. But Cascarino was turning around and saying that he reckons that Wan-Bissaka could do a good job. Now, I then subsequently saw Nick from Claret and Booze put out a post saying that he thinks that El Hadji Malik Diouf could possibly be deployed in that role. I don't know either one of them. One thing I will say is I think that out of the two of them, I think they could both cover the ground. I really do. But I think that in terms of ball recoveries, I think I'd probably give the edge to Wan-Bissaka myself. And look, I haven't looked at the stats. I don't know factually whether, one versus the other, which one turns out to be superior. I don't know. But yeah, it's just a thought. Larry saying fair shout, was confused too, but shows how unfamiliar Nuno is with the club. I think he was unfamiliar with exactly how bad we are and how much work needs to be done behind the scenes. But I think he now knows, Larry. Would be nice if Nuno just done the obvious. Yeah, square pegs in square holes, round pegs in round holes. That'd be quite nice. But again, if we see it again in the next match and beyond. On compensation, we never employ anyone worth buying. 100% Leslie. Comatose Ball says Tom Linsky. You are completely correct. After 3 years, it's ownership not signing the right players and spending the money. It's 100% the ownership, mate. It's 100%. You've got to follow the money, and it all comes back to one person. If we were any slower as a squad, we'd need reversing lights, mate. With that slow, we get overtaken by stationary objects. That's how slow our midfield is. They get overtaken by stationary objects. There's a comment there, and I'm going to come on to this in a minute. We have the slowest midfield in the Prem. We do, mate. It's non-existent, the pace. 25 million for Guilherme, and we never see him. What's happened to Luis Guilherme? Now, that's another question. Where is Luis Guilherme? This is a player with pace to burn. Now, in the limited amount of games I've seen him, his pace has been there for all to see. Now, I've not seen him enough to formulate an opinion on he's good enough, he's not good enough. And I don't know what he's showing in training. I don't know whether maybe there's a sort of clash of personalities or whatever. But the one thing about Luis Guilherme, he's rapid. He's rapid. And I don't understand why he's not on the bench any more than you do, Mandy. If any of you guys have got any thoughts, please feel free. Don't forget JWP and Rodriguez all selling losses. Wages an issue as well. Unfortunately, it might take relegation to lose the Dross and Sullivan, but all will be losses. This is another thing I want to ask you guys about. And this comes off of the back of what happened at Hillsborough, Sheffield Wednesday. So they've obviously had someone in charge that for a number of years has been universally unpopular with the fans. Sounds familiar, right? So they've eventually got to a point in time where through all the ructions, all the protests, all the boycotts, all this, that, and the other, yesterday they went into administration. Now, as a result, they take a 12-point deduction. But their chairman, who Chansiri's his name, can't remember his Christian name, but Chansiri, Mr. Chansiri, okay, he actually had his surname. Get this. I mean, how self-obsessed can you be? He had his name, Chansiri, spelt into the seats at Hillsborough. So you've got this stand of blue seats, and in white seats, you've got CHANSIRI in white seats, spelling out his name, Chansiri. Could you imagine that at West Ham? You know, you got there's the sort of the white seats, and in claret seats there's the word cunt. No, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, but you get my point. Sullivan, okay, right, or maybe you prefer the first version of it. I don't know. Anyway, So he's now, so the club's now got into administration. He's no longer the chairman. And there was footage. They were literally, as they've announced that he's no longer the chairman, they're ripping out the seats with his name on. And I was like, wow. But then I stopped and I thought about us. If the price for getting rid of Sullivan was going into administration, and obviously all of the ramifications that that has on a financial level and all the rest of it, and people's jobs as well, you got to factor that in, because it does have a knock-on impact into people's livelihoods. But if the price we paid for getting rid of David Sullivan was to go into administration and take a 12-point deduction, and whether that was in the Premier League or in the Championship, but at whatever point in time it occurred, is that a price you'd pay? Because if it happens this season, look, I think we're down anyway, so it'd make fuck all difference. But let's say it happens next season or the season after, and now we are a Championship club and we get hit with a 12-point deduction. That's a pretty big sort of obstacle to climb. But if that was what guaranteed that Sullivan, Brady, and all that lot fucked off, would you do it? And here's the thing, and I saw this in the middle of the week. They were playing Middlesbrough at Hillsborough, and there was no home fans. So when they said they were boycotting it, they meant it. They were like, no, we're fucking staying away. And I think the only fans that were in the ground pretty much were the Middlesbrough fans. All the home fans stayed away. When it was announced that Sheffield Wednesday had gone into administration and Chansiri is now out of the picture, everybody started coming back, and all the fans were sort of, they played Oxford, and I think they got beat, but it wasn't about the result. It was about the fact that, that fucker's gone. The guy that was sort of, just basically draining all of the energy out of a great club like Sheffield Wednesday. If that was the price that we had to pay, administration and a 12-point deduction, which would probably hasten a relegation to whatever league was below us at that moment in time, if that was the price that we had to pay, would you pay it? I'll leave you with that. Sullivan and clueless managers apart, the players are not putting in full 90 minutes season after season. It's boiling my piss as much as anything. I'll just get that back up for you just in case you didn't see it, Tom Linsky. That feeds into your narrative of the players not putting in a full 90 minutes. Those stats are shocking. Those stats are absolutely shocking. That is just a dereliction of duty for me. You cannot be 19th in the Premier League for distance running at high speed and be 4th at distance walking and turn around and say, oh, no, that has nothing to do with us being in 19th in the Premier League. It has everything to do with you being 19th in the Premier League. That tells me that you are a bunch of lazy fuckers who aren't worth the shirt that you wear. You're not worth the support that the fans give you, who spend a lot of money and take a lot of time following you up and down the country, and in some years across Europe, and you're selling them short. They need to do a proper run through Epping Forest like the old days. They do. I tell you what, and I tell you what, we need to we'd be sort of driving alongside them and sort of firing sort of spud guns at them or whatever, sort of get them moving, or catapults, bastards. If we survive and Sullivan stays, we can only expect 17th is good enough ambition. Expect nothing else. Yeah, I'm with you there, mate. That's all he would be interested in. Just keep us above the drop zone. Gatesy knows I'm an American and starting following West Ham in 2019. I love this club. He does. Guys, don't doubt Larry's affection, love, support for this club just because he's the other side of the pond, just because maybe he's not been supporting the club since 1952 or whatever. He supports the club just as much. He's not someone that anyone here should be giving a hard time to. So, we're all one family. We don't want to be arguing one another, right? Special one. Hope you're well. I've said this pretty much everywhere. If Nuno would have just stuck to the same system we see versus Everton and Arsenal, I reckon we get 4 or 6 points against Brett. And that's the thing that you have to kind of look at and go, why did he make... I mean, even the Everton game in isolation, a lot of our best play came in the second half, right? That was when we got the equaliser, and that was when a lot of our best play happened. It also happened after Freddie Potts stepped onto the pitch. Now, Freddie Potts once again steps onto the pitch against Leeds, and that was when a lot of our best play started to unfold, right? So that's now 2 games where Freddie Potts has been introduced, and both times our level of performance has gone upwards. So I'd be very interested to see against Newcastle where Freddie Potts is when that starting lineup is announced. Because I'll tell you this, if he's on the bench and Andy Irving is once again in midfield with Thomas Souček, then I start to seriously question whether what other people are saying and that Nuno's trying to get sacked is actually more credible than at the minute I give it credence for. Jordan loves one thing, the sound of his own voice. He does. As I say, he does speak a lot of sense on other occasions, but just that's not. I'd say when he turns around and says, "Oh, I'm no defender of David Sullivan," and he then goes on to defend David Sullivan. Well, stop saying that you're not a defender of David Sullivan then. 29 games still to play, so it can be turned around. Look, we could still win the Premier League, right? 87 points. Yeah, could be done. It won't, but you got to sort of think positively, haven't you? Yeah, we need to get players that care. It appears to me that an awful lot of them now don't. Yep, but fair point, Pierre. He is one of those, that's for sure. They need a DOF in place before January, significantly before January. They need to plan for. Look, we needed to have a director of football in, but I think the truth of the matter is, special one. I think we have actually got a director of football in place. It was confirmed by Sean Weston a couple of months back, after obviously Tim Stighton was removed from post. The person that was fulfilling the role of director of football was David Sullivan. So that's the director of football. He's probably also, until a replacement is found, he's probably also our head of recruitment as well. We need to be well and truly prepared for both, especially the latter. I don't trust the board to plan or manage that. Well, at the minute, I think that's precisely who is. Tom Linsky says, don't hold your breath. A few little pleasantries being don't know what the fuck is going on with YouTube handles. What is your YouTube handle different? I don't know. I've got you down as Tom Linsky, but whatever. Tom has from in last. Our centre backs are awful, says Larry. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. If there's any alterations with YouTube names or whatever, I've got no idea. I don't believe I've got any influence in that. Shows on some channels, but not on others. Oh, yeah, it looks like there's some strangeness going on with people's names. People needs to ease up on the players for the last 2 games, in my opinion. I'm not saying they're perfect, but he plays over half the side out of position. I get that, but there's some people that you look at and say, well, they weren't played out of position. Kilman and Todibo. Those 2, I'm sorry. Running and jumping and heading and just generally being organised, that's your role, and you can't do it. So those 2, I wouldn't sort of, you could turn around and say Ollie Scholes, like I say, he was at fault for the first goal, I would suggest. You could turn around and say a number of players that were being asked to do jobs that are fundamentally not theirs, but yeah, last 2 results were so. I wouldn't say they were solely on him, but I think he has to take a huge slice of the responsibility for sure. The options are Nuno is an idiot or he wants out, whatever explanations are there. He could be one of these people in life, Obsidian, that just believes that they're right, even in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. They're one of these people that thinks that I'm okay, it didn't work out that time, but I'm going to try it again. Okay, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to try it again. And you remember the old Albert Einstein saying, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome. I'd start to think that maybe the guy's insane if he keeps doing it. We've had a few seasons now where the players have had thumbs up their asses as well. May well be down to Sullivan, but not good enough. But again, we've not invested in the quality, and this is what I've been trying to get across. Is that's my standpoint? Is that we may well have spent, and we have spent, a lot of money in terms of transfer fees, in terms of wages, in terms of the agents' fees, and one thing and another, when we're bringing players into the training ground, into London Stadium. But any fool can spend a lot of money on a player that's not up to the mark. Anybody can. We've spent a lot of money on, again, Jean-Claire Todibo and Max Kilman, just to single those out. Spent a lot of money on them in wages, in transfer fees, in agents' fees. And they're crap. They're absolutely fucking shit. And if you do that continually, which, let's be honest, we probably have. Fulkrug's another example. Players that we brought in on big money, one way and another, who provided us with fuck all in terms of value for money. So this constant underinvestment in quality, not in terms of the financial expenditure, but in terms of the quality, in terms of what they actually offer West Ham United Football Club. We've done it on many, many transfer windows, and it's this accumulation of just shit that's built up and now has left us with a squad that's going down. That's it. I think we've been poorly managed for a long time. I hate to say this, as I couldn't stand it, but Potter was dropping JWP away from the right 11. Basically, the 11 versus Everton should have been used as a plan A up until January. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that, there or thereabouts. I think, Potts, as I say, I think is someone that came in and did well in the second half of that game and did against Leeds. And I'd be very disappointed to see him not utilised against Newcastle. Reckon we pick up a good handful of points. That was the setup the last two games? Yeah, you're probably right, but it isn't. It's not what happened, so we didn't get fuck all. I think the last two games was exactly where we couldn't afford to drop any bollocks, and Nuno dropped at least 6 twice. Yep, you're right. Not having a DOF during all this transition has killed us as well. Managers always come in with a fresh assessment of the side, and you could tell from Potter's window the process was anything but linear. People won't enter the London Stadium versus Newcastle until they see the lineup. You may see more empty seats than the Brentford game. That is true. Nuno could possibly do more to help the Hammers United movement than possibly anybody else could do individually. Leighton is less than 2 miles down the road. Do a deal with them and get out of this soulless shithole and build from the ground up. Do you think that they would deal with us, given all of the stuff that happened around the London Stadium between, obviously I know Barry Hearn's not at the club anymore, but I think there's possibly still people around that wouldn't be very pleased to do business with us. And I think that they've kind of got into bed with Tottenham Hotspur, so I'm not sure that we're going to go down that. Do you know what? If we left London Stadium, I think we end up going to Charlton. I think we go to the Valley. Those stats have a lot to do with the way Potter set up 5-3-2. All the emphasis is on the wing backs to provide the running. We all respect Lawrence, says Tom Linsky. Good. Respect is something that's absolutely non-negotiable here for me. Amongst all you guys, if you can't respect one another, then that's a pretty sorry state of affairs. So good to hear. Those stats scream modern football to me, individualism and soulless. I wish I could disagree with you, but I can't. Those, again, just to sort of get it up there for people that haven't seen it, these are the stats. Shocking, absolutely shocking. If I was Nuno, I'd get them training every day at 6 a.m. Martin, he should be doing that now. He should be getting them in and flogging them and getting them fit. As I say, those stats I just had up on the screen, not good enough. Lardog is West Ham 100%, says Leslie. What team would you pick for Newcastle? Well, Mandy, you're going to have to watch the match preview, aren't you? I can't give that away now. Spoilers. Luke says, is Northampton Town team lost yesterday? Not good to hear, Luke. Hope you are well. And thank you for popping along. Leslie says, Areola, Wan-Bissaka. Oh, no, Leslie, you can't put those two back in. Oh, Leslie. Don't do that. Todibo and Kilman at centre back. God. Magassa, Potts, Fernandez, Bowen, Somerville, Wilson, but he won't play this team. Oh, Leslie, could you not find anybody? Could you not get, the when players practice free kicks and you've got them plastic mannequins, could you not play them at centre back other than those two? My God. Yeah, I could see it happening if it happened. As I say, I don't see Leyton Orient doing business with us. I really don't. Tottenham, I don't think we'd even go there. I suppose Arsenal could come into play, but I'm not sure that they would share with a Premier League rival. I think it would be Charlton, like we shared with Charlton, or Charlton shared with us back in the day. Orient are looking to move stadium. They are, but I don't think anything's been finalised yet. Can we have their old one? Let's swap with Orient. If we were forced to leave the bowl, what London club or clubs could we? As I say, I think the only two that I think could be possible would be Charlton or maybe Arsenal. But as I say, I don't think Tottenham. I don't think Leyton Orient. And I think I don't really want to go sort of like too much further afield. I think a lot of people would have a problem going south of the river. But, beggars can't be choosers. If we left London Stadium for whatever the circumstances were around that, if we had to do it, I just think you'd have to sort of grin and bear it. People are talking about Todibo and Kilman like Igor is any better. We don't know. Until I've seen the guy play in the first team, I can't really form a judgment on whether he's better or worse than either one of those two idiots. Carroll scored for Dagenham this weekend. He got them the winner. Or maybe, does he fancy sort of ripping up his contract and coming back and doing anything for us? I don't think he'd be that stupid, would he? Newcastle and Burnley are massive games now. It's do or die. Yep. But then again, I would suggest Brentford and Leeds would do or die, and we died. I'm waiting for him to be picked, then everyone to start looking for new answers again. And Obsidian says, can't judge Nuno's hush. Look, you have to look at his picking of the team in the last two matches and say that there were better options. The team that he finished with in both the Brentford game and the Leeds game, I would argue probably should have been there or thereabouts the team that he started with. Why didn't he? I don't know. And as I say, there have been a few people that have put the theory out there that this is self-sabotage by Nuno. I don't know whether it is or isn't, but the more he does it, the more I start to think that maybe, just maybe, those people might have a point. Magassa as a centre-back, that could be an option. Souček could be an option. Who have we got? Igor has not played for 6 months. He hasn't, but look, I don't know, but I come back to Craig Dawson. Craig Dawson, we had for a good couple of months sitting there doing nothing, and all the Watford fans that would talk about him would say how shit he was. And he wasn't, not for us anyway. So I don't know. I can't really speak of Igor, whether he's any good or not. I've not seen the guy play. Mandy comes in, AWB midfield with Potts and so you're going down the Tony Cascarino route, Wan-Bissaka in midfield. It's worth a go. It's absolutely worth a go. But anyway, guys, look, I'm gonna disappear because he does look a unit. My brother's picked up on that. He looks like a bit of a beast. Got to start Potts, Magassa, Fernandez in midfield, Wilson to start up top, Bowen and Somerville on the wings. Good choice. I meant to type, I can't trust Nuno's judgment. Don't worry about it, Obsidian. It's all good. Just blame it on fat thumbs if you're on your phone or whatever. Look, I've been going for just short of an hour and a half. I'm going to knock it on the head, guys. If you say, before you all disappear, if you could just drop a like on the video. If you've got any hypes that are available this week, I would appreciate if you could give that to this particular broadcast. And if you could just check, have a look if you are subscribed to the channel. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do for you, because I don't know if this is going to help some of you guys, but there's a QR code that's now just appeared in that top No. There. Yeah. That's your QR code. So if you can scan that, right, that will take you to the YouTube page, and then you can click subscribe. Now, as I'm looking right now, we've currently got 1,780. Oh, do you know, that's a shame. We got up to 1,783, and now it's dropped down to 1,782. So I don't know if there's any of you guys that's unsubscribed, but so we've just lost a subscriber. I hate that. Anyway, if you could subscribe, I would be eternally grateful. I really would. Cheers, Gatesy, everyone. Have a good week. Be good. Come on, you effing irons. Damien Tyson was nowhere even near that. Very short for a Premier League centre-back. He was brought in by Potter as cover to facilitate the occasional free at the back. Not a chance in hell he copes in a back four. Same presence on the pitch would be a both. Look, we don't know. I don't know about Igor. As I say, I've not seen the guy play other than obviously in the Conference League final when Bowen skinned him. But there you go. Anyway, I'm going to disappear, guys. As I say, really do appreciate you joining us on this particular broadcast. It really does, really has made me smile a little bit through all the doom and the gloom. And for any of you that are watching this after the fact, at this moment, you'll be seeing 2 videos on the screen that you can look at for alternative content, as well as the little button in the middle to click and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you again soon. Come on, you irons.